Hi everyone, and thank you so much for coming and visiting us today for these talks. I hope you've been enjoying the previous talks between the other talented speakers that we have here at ASF. And I wonder, what were your expectations coming to this event today? Did you expect to be inspired and motivated? Did you expect to see a new worldview? Just for a moment, I want you to feel a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of anxiety, and a little bit of fear. I want you to pretend that we were in the auditorium, that we had a real audience around us, and that we were actually surrounded by people. And now I want you to pretend that I'm asking everyone to stand up and to sing together. Now it makes sense. I mean, I am a music teacher, of course, I'm going to include singing in my talk. Or better yet, I'm going to ask just you to stand up in front of everyone and sing completely by yourself. How would that make you feel? How would you react in that situation? I think for most people, it's a true nightmare of a situation. And I mean, if it's not a nightmare about getting up and singing in front of people, then it's at least a nightmare about a presentation that you didn't finish. And now you have to get up in front of everyone, and maybe also you forgot your clothes at home. In this example of singing in front of everyone, most people would not have sung. Or even the people who did sing would at least feel nervous and anxious. And this is normal. I mean, spontaneous presentation in front of a group of people is extremely difficult. And asking people to sing in front of each other is like the worst of the worst. And that would be true for public speaking. That would be true for acting. That would be true for painting, even for just writing something down in front of an audience. It would be difficult. Now, most people are certain of what they can and cannot do, and especially of what they cannot do. Given experiences like this, in uncomfortable situations, our anxiety prevents us from giving the presentation, from being fluid in our creation, prevents us from spontaneous creation. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk about spontaneous creation. I want to talk about improvisation. Now, when you think of improvisation, you may have a mental image of a jazz musician or of a theater group. And truthfully, this is the perspective that I am coming to you from. As a music educator, as a musician, I would love nothing more than to tell people to go and to join a choir, to join some kind of a performance group. But it's a lot to ask a group of people who are listening to some stranger on a screen just tell you to join a performance group. So instead, what I want to talk about is how improvisation can truly help us in many different areas and with many different experiences. Now, there's a good quote by Stephen Nachmanovitch, and he says this beautifully in his book, Free Play. He says, doing without being too attached to the outcome, because doing is its own outcome. Now, this is a little bit like the cliche, the journey is more important than the destination. But I really like this quote because it really tends to explain why we enjoy creation in the first place. Now, I've been working for the past 3 years with a community choir here at ASF. And this community choir is made up of faculty, of staff. Sometimes we have students, sometimes we have parents. We have foreigners, we have people from here in Mexico. And really, it's a diverse group of people, and especially a group of people with a diverse relationship with music and with performance. Introducing improvisation exercises has really helped our group. Here are 3 of the exercises that we use. So in the first place, we have an exercise where we do an improvisation warm-up. And in this kind of warm-up, we start by singing rather softly. We don't really pay attention to what the other people are doing around us. Maybe we're standing very far away from the other people. And the point of this exercise is not to collaborate. We just try to create something very personal and quiet in that moment. In the second exercise, we start to collaborate with the people around us. And we try to do that in as ugly a way as possible. And we try to do it loudly. This is just developing some kind of a comfort with the idea of ugly things. In the third exercise, we do begin to collaborate as well, but we also try to maintain that confidence and that comfort with the idea of ugly ideas. We're not specifically trying to create ugly ideas, but we are trying to allow them to happen, but also the beautiful ideas that happen at the same time. Now, this level of improvisation took practice and has taken time. And you may imagine that the music teachers in the group have an easier time learning and working through this process. That's not necessarily always true. Sometimes the people with the most experience have the highest level of self-judgment, and sometimes have the hardest time experimenting. But this is one of the advantages of these improvisation exercises. It really helps us to accept those truly ugly moments. Now, I have noticed from my own experience that there are several concrete benefits to practicing improvisation. There is an increased level of teamwork and collaboration. There is an increased level of self-acceptance. There is an increased level of the ability to encounter ideas that are new and unique and unexpected. And there is a healthier relationship in general with the process. Now, it should be unsurprising that a lot of the research that is being done on improvisation centers around music and theater. In one study, Lindau and Lamb measured the cognitive function of musicians during the improvisation process. And they explained that improvisation is a remarkably complex process. But they measured that musicians actually showed reduced cognitive function in certain areas. The musicians were monitoring themselves less. They were, quote, creating a more immediate connection with the music. And this is certainly a skill that we can use in all areas. Another study, the causal inference of cortical neural networks in musical improvisation, a title that was definitely not improvised, found something very interesting. That audiences really resonated, appreciated, found more beautiful the music with free emotional expression rather than the mechanical rendition of music. The audience enjoyed the improvisation more than they enjoyed the prepared music. This is one of the great strengths of improvisation. By opening ourselves up and by practicing these strategies, the community choir has been able to encounter these moments that would not have otherwise happened. They have practiced to make this happen, and they have worked on taking those risks. Now, how many anecdotes do we have of chance encounters that led to truly profound and famous historical moments? How many inventors and investors who met in a moment and came up with an idea that became a product that is now ubiquitous and famous? Steve Jobs. And I mean, of course, I was going to include a quote by Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs recognized that creativity comes from spontaneous meetings, from random discussion. David Radcliffe, who is an architect for Google, says that casual collisions are what we try and create in the work environment. You can't schedule innovation. You can't schedule idea generation. And this openness to spontaneous creation, to serendipity, leads to beautiful and truly profound ideas. Now, in full disclosure, it can also lead to ideas that make us deeply uncomfortable. But practicing improvisation teaches us to accept these uncomfortable moments. When we accept every possibility, we open the door to this spontaneous creation. Now, this is a study where they took certain strategies from theater, and they found that these strategies were being used in certain business situations. So here, Peter Hackbert describes how the design firm IDEO is using these theater exercises in their idea generation process. Now you can see that there are a number of strategies that they are using. I want to talk about two of them. The first is this idea of deferring judgment. And this is the idea that we should avoid criticism of others and of ourselves during the creation process. Now, this doesn't mean that every idea is a good idea. But like we saw with the musicians, they didn't allow their self-criticism, their self-judgment, to stop the flow of creativity. Peter Hackbert continues to say that people are safe within the fortress of our images and are reluctant to come out and give up control. So often, in education, in our jobs, in music, we find that the thing that holds us back the most is our own ego, or is our fear of judgment. And we know that we judge ourselves more harshly than most other people. Peter Hackbert also says that creativity involves risk-taking. If an activity is under control, it is not risky. In order for people to really reap the benefits of practicing creativity, they need to give in to spontaneity and to their true selves, as shown by uninhibited improvisation. Now, please do not start practicing these strategies in your next meeting, in your next science class. Coming in and saying every single idea that comes into your brain as fast as possible is not a good strategy. But we can start by practicing these things in as many ways as we possibly can. Now, one way to start practicing, and one way that we can start implementing these things in our daily life, is to join a performance group. And I mean that seriously. Sometimes practicing something in its most obvious context is the best way to try it. And I know that at the beginning of this talk, I said I wouldn't ask you to join a performance group. But I kind of am. And not only does it help us with our improvisation, does it help us with our presentation skills, it's also just nice at the end of a long, difficult day to create with other people. But if creation, if performance with another group of people isn't right for you, I mean, that's fair enough. We can still take these strategies and try them in our daily life. This study done by Peter Hackbert goes into detail about different strategies that have been used both in the theater world and in the business world. And I recommend checking it out. You can look up the strategies that were used by IDEO. But most importantly, I want you to remember that this takes time. This voice of self-judgment that we have takes practice to silence. And the truth is that sometimes it never fully goes away. But by practicing improvisation, we can learn not to allow that voice to interfere with our creative process, to stop our flow of ideas. So however it is that you may use improvisation in your life, it is an incredibly powerful tool that is largely untapped by many people. If you are looking to gain an edge, or if you are looking to improve a team dynamic, if you are trying to discover your own creativity, or if you just want to enjoy the creative process more, improvisation is one of the best tools that we have. Thank you.